Their message for humanity is that, and it's the tenet of many religions, is that we need to become more loving, we need to become forgiving of ourselves and forgiving of others, thus stopping the wheel of karma. We need to focus on becoming more service to others on a daily basis. And we need to focus on raising our vibration and our consciousness.
Hello. Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone for joining us here this weekend. It's been wonderful getting to meet every one of y'all. And I have to say, some of the gifts that were given to me were extremely moving. I really appreciate how service to others this group is. Thank you. Well, yesterday my presentation was a little bit short because I put end of presentation in the wrong place. So we got about 2/3 of the way through my presentation. So I fixed it, but I think it worked out because I heard that there were a lot of people that had questions that they wanted answered. So I'm going to do the last third of my presentation from yesterday, and then we're going to spend more time on Q&A, if that's okay with y'all. Okay. This starts right where we left off. After the spheres started to appear in the solar system and SOHO was capturing images and the secret space program had begun to track the spheres, we have me coming forward, and I came forward on a forum first. And the name it was Goode, my last name, Texas State Guard is what it stood for, but they wanted to get clever to try to, I guess, make it look like Goode ETXSG. So I had a lot of people trying to guess what that might mean, but there was no big mystery there. So I came out, I wanted to be anonymous in the beginning. I wanted to feed this information to various researchers because I saw disinformation coming out. So I began to do some work on a forum, Project Avalon, and taught the one truth. And at that point, I was wanting to remain anonymous, but as we see, that didn't work out too well. On October the 13th, 2014, I sent David Wilcock an email coming forward, and I had spoken to him since about 2009, giving him various insider information, but we really didn't really connect, only through email. And after I sent him an email with a bunch of links to the forum posts I've made and asked him to take a look at it, and if it piqued his interest, to give me a call and we'd talk about it. Well, he went and he looked through the forum and he called me almost immediately. If we could, that's the original email I sent. I copied Ben Fulford in as well because I knew they worked together sometimes. Yeah. Thanks. On December the 5th of 2015, the cabal decided that, working along with the reptilians, they would use this new exotic weapon that they had. And it was stationed in Australia. And I was told that the targeting center was in southern Africa. What occurred is they located one of these spheres and they fired a massive energy beam at it. And using an Aikido principle, the blue avians, or the spheres themselves, just redirected that energy back at where it came from. And It destroyed the base and killed a lot of the people that were present and reptilians that were present for the attack. Okay. Right after this happened, the outer barrier was erected. So the cabal, they had an idea that the spheres were not here for their agenda, but they weren't quite sure. But as soon as they fired on the sphere and the destruction occurred down on at the base that they had, this outer barrier was erected. And this was to prevent all non-terrestrials and humans from coming and going from the solar system. It was to mainly prevent the reptilians from escaping and going to another star system that they controlled to hide. Furthermore, a no-fly zone was put up around the Earth. In the beginning, it was a blue sphere. Then it phased out, and the Secret Space Program Alliance took over patrolling the skies above the Earth. And the SSP Alliance, they were behind the other groups technology-wise. They were given information on how to build technology by the Blue Avians that was purely for defensive purposes. There was no offensive way to use these technologies. On December 11th, I think we've all seen the story where there was an astronaut that screamed, "Oh my God," because she saw a UFO outside the ISS. And that occurred very soon after the sphere was fired on and the outer barrier was erected. And there's a clip. On February 18th, we saw in the news that a giant plume had appeared in the southern hemisphere of Mars. Scientists were unable to explain what may have caused it. It showed up in various news reports, as you see up there. And right there is an image of a very large plume. This turned out to be one of two atrocities. This was the Mars atrocity. The Secret Space Program Alliance ended up being responsible for this. The Secret Space Program Alliance was made up of people who had defected from the other space programs. And we had recent defectors from Darkfleet and the ICC that had actionable intelligence about a base on Mars that produced a critical piece of equipment, a critical piece of technology. They saw the opportunity to attack it, so they did, without any type of approval from the rest of the SSP Alliance Council. One more. I'm getting ahead of my slides. Yes. This facility on Mars had 250,000 human being slaves that were forced to produce this technology. And they were seen as just acceptable casualties by the SSP Alliance. That's a very large amount of people. Right in the same 24, 48-hour time frame, there was a big earthquake off the coast of South Carolina. And the earthquake was the report of the weapon that was used on a reptilian base. And this reptilian base had 700 humans there that were also slaves and were being used sort of like test animals in some of the places where they, pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, that kind of thing. 8 days after the second atrocity, the second attack, the cabal begins to immediately accelerate their their partial and limited disclosure plan. On February 26, a very artificial-looking structure and light were announced as being found on Ceres. You see the size of Ceres compared to Earth. And there you see the bright spot. And as y'all know, no matter which angle this heavenly body was photographed from, you could see a reflection, which should not be possible. If you have a flat surface or even a curved surface that's reflective, at a certain point, you're not going to be able to see a reflection. There we go. It's taken from several different perspectives. And here we see straight lines and, what is that, an octagon? I can't see. Very unnatural looking geography, if you ask me. And the next day, Gonzalez had been in contact with the Blue Avians the same amount of time as I had. And he was contacted out of the blue, and my name came up as the person that they wanted to be their delegate. And he was confused in the beginning because he expected, a lieutenant commander or some other something to be in front of the name other than just a civilian type name. Yeah, and they started to dig around to find out more about me, who I was, where I was, and there was not a whole lot of information to find in the beginning. In the beginning, they found that most of my record had been redacted or expunged. So they found a little bit of information about me and began contact with me. On March 1st, I was transported to a sphere for my first time. And previous to that, Tyr had first approached me in dreams and then started to appear in front of me in my house physically. So being picked up by one of these orbs for the first time was an extremely wild experience. It was, go ahead. That's an artist's representation of me being taken. Okay. An artist created this 3D video of me standing in my living room, and a blue sphere comes in and circles around and encapsulates me and then takes off to the ceiling. From inside the blue orb, it acted as a technology or a filter that allowed me to see the spheres that were spread out in space. Without looking through the wall of the sphere, they were invisible. You couldn't see them. And the view of all these three different sized spheres all around, spread out, was amazing. And an artist created this representation, and this one as well. And this is depicting some of the crackling energy that these spheres are absorbing and mitigating. And you can see the crackling that occurs between the spheres of the energy that's coming into the solar system. It's another representation. And I think we've all seen this image. The artist is a well-known artist. His name is Android. Some of y'all may know him. He usually does beautiful art to music at symphonies or jazz concerts. And he sat down at Gaia to do this image with us. And in the beginning, he wasn't too happy. He thought it looked like Howard the Duck. This is the same artist that did the other 3D representation. He did this one of raw Tyr air to give it a little bit more depth so you have a better idea of what he looked like. This is another one standing. Yeah. Now, yes, 8 feet tall. And I'm sitting on the couch with my dog next to me. And she's got her chin right here on my knee, and I'm petting her. and Tier Air just appears in the room. I jump, my dog jumps, and turns her head up and gives me this look like, what the? And then she's shaking, and she puts her head back down, and then she slides her nose behind my back until he left. But it startled both of us pretty badly. That's the perspective we were sitting at. We were in an L-shaped couch, and we were sitting just before where it curves on the L. I think I have a photograph of the actual room. Yeah, he appeared right there, and we were sitting right here. Next one. I was next invited to appear before the SSP Alliance and their council. I was giving no other information. I had no idea what to expect. In the beginning, the SSP would come and pick me up in this, what they called a DART, and it had a place for a pilot and a co-pilot in the front, and then 3 seats in the back. And it was about the size of a car, and a little bit pyramid shaped on top. It was triangular. Is it refusing to go? Oh, there we go. And you can see the couch where in the other photograph you could see, I guess the placement, Tier Air would be just at that angle when he appeared. But to be picked up, I had to walk out into the backyard and get into the DART. They quit picking me up in the DART after it started to attract too much attention. Next picture. I would come out, I would walk through into this little patio area and then directly into the backyard. And that was the backyard. There's an area right out there that, the area that you can see has the least grass possible. That's where it was coming down to pick me up. And my wife was scratching her head a lot in the beginning when I was telling her about all this. And after one of my visitations, I told her I'd been on a trip, and she went out in the backyard, and the ground was wet, and she saw my footprints going out and then disappear, and then about 20 or 30 feet way on the other side, my feet begin again and walk back to walk inside. In the beginning, she didn't know what to think, but she ended up having confirmations very soon. Well, the DART picked me up and took me to the Lunar Operation Command. I don't think Dodge made it. Probably Boeing or something. When I arrived, I noticed a bunch of civilians. Some were wearing their day clothes, some were wearing pajamas, and they were walking around with a very bewildered look on their face. I forgot to mention, when the DART picked me up this time, when the hatch opened, I looked in, there was a girl sitting in the middle seat, and she was just very excited. And she was like, "Isn't this great? Isn't this exciting? Do you know where we're going?" And she was just really excited. And I didn't expect another person to be in the vehicle. And we flew up to the LOC. People were walking around being told, follow the red line, to get over to the VIP area, where there were 2 presentation rooms side by side. And all the civilians were being walked into this presentation room. I still don't know what happened in there. But I was walked into another room where all the SSP Alliance was, and also there was some civilian looking leadership that were there. I was officially introduced to Gonzalez, who pretty much walked up to me directly when I walked in that room. And immediately I recognized him. I had seen him in 2013, right after my detached retina, and I had to be taken for the Mayan to help me with the full recall memories I was having. He was the person that was the military observer there, and I had no idea who he was until this point. With no warning or any idea of why I was there or what I was supposed to do, I was walked right to the middle of the presentation area. The presentation room had about 200 to 300 seats that angled up, kind of like in a college auditorium that you've seen, and it went around like that. And it looked like cherry wood on the walls going around. And of course, I was walked to the front, not told anything. I was walked to the front, and Gonzalez pointed down to where I needed to stand. And I had very quickly gotten ready that morning. I put on a NASA cap that I received on vacation down to Houston. And I walked up, and I was getting eyeballed very heavily by these guys. And one of them said, "Take off that ridiculous cover." And I took the hat off, and I kind of flung it. And when I did, he saw in my hand, my daughter had painted with face paint a dinosaur on my hand. And one of them said, "What the hell are you doing with a reptilian on your hand?" And I tried to wipe it off on my leg. It wouldn't come off. So I was feeling a little bit under the gun there. So a few of the other guys, they were kind of huddled up in like little cliques, talking with each other, and they were making little smart aleck remarks to me here and there, and I'm just standing there wondering what was going on. And then all of a sudden, everybody in the room just went like that and got real quiet. So I looked behind me, and Tier Air and one of the golden triangle-headed beings were standing there. Everyone got immediately quiet. Next. Here's an image of the golden triangle-headed being, about 10, 11 feet tall. And their arms and their legs, it almost looked like they were underwater. And it was very weird. And as you could see, their toes were like tripods, and they kept going like up and down. They were moving like this and kind of going up and down with their toes. It was very surreal looking. Later on, when I went with the Anshar for when they got to meet the Guardians for the first time, they were greeted by a golden triangle-headed being, and I got to see it a lot better. I was looking for zippers and all kinds of other stuff. But I looked back, and I could see the shape of its head going flat against this shield of a face. That's another angle. I think, yeah, that's supposed to be animated as well, I think. Yeah. Raw Tier Air interfaces with me immediately, and we invite questions from the audience. And we answered a number of questions, but the one that seems to stick out the most was one of the SSP Alliance people asked, "Are you the Ra from the Law of One?" And I waited for the response, and the response just came back, "I am Raw Tier Air." And when I did this, they all just kind of looked at each other like, that's not really a real answer. But I guess it was. Yes, my favorite meeting. That same month, I was told that I was going to be meeting with the Draco Alliance. And the Draco Alliance, the people I was going to meet with were a Draco White Royal and some of the insectoids that were there with the Draco White Royal. That's supposed to represent me, and this 14-foot tall monster was one of the top White Royals. I've had a lot of people say it was inky and stuff like that. He gave me his name, and it was nothing like that. It was a very Middle Eastern sounding name. I made the mistake of telling David, and he calls the name out all the time, and I'm telling him, do not say the name out loud. It's not a good idea. What sticks out the most, beyond how invasive this being was when it interfaced with you, was the smell. It was kind of a musky urine smell. It was horrible. And there were, I thought there were 6, but Gonzalez said there were 5 women that were there that were obviously slaves. And as we left, we were able to bring them with us as a part of, as a good faith towards the negotiation they were trying to get us to take to the SBA. They were human girls, yes. They were all blondes. I was taken by a different shuttlecraft to I'm believing it was somewhere in the southwest United States. From the top of we landed on the roof of a hotel, an abandoned hotel, and looking out, I could see a desert environment. We went down an elevator that, just like in the movies, a glass elevator in the front, and you look down, and it's kind of like one of those garden hotels. And as we were going down, we could see all these beings standing out below us and it was just a very ominous feeling. You're getting closer and closer and closer to them. And these were obviously very evil beings. At this point, the Royal White reached out and grabbed my mind, and immediately all I could perceive was this being. Everything else in the room I didn't even know existed, and its eyes started morphing, changing colors, and just I really don't know how to explain it. They kept almost pulsating, and it took me off guard. I'd never had a being communicate with me that was that powerful. Now, there were humans there. There were humans there that were a part of this committee of 200. And they overheard what was going on and reported it to the rest of their different cabal groups. And this caused, for a short time, a huge uprising among the cabal, because this white Draco offered to leave all of their lower caste and human servants in the hands of the global authorities if they were allowed to leave from our solar system. So this was seen as a major betrayal by a lot of these cabal groups and other non-terrestrials that are a part of this alliance. Yeah, I was lucky enough not to be the one that delivered this news, but the request was denied, and I refused to ever meet with another one of these beings ever again. And not too long after Gonzalez had the same experience as I did, he thought that I was exaggerating the power of this being, and it took 3 days to get over this etheric hangover that this being gave me. It was a massive headache all to the back of my skull. And then Gonzalez ended up having the exact same experience. I'm sure everybody remembers the Mars facility tour information. That occurred shortly after, and the ICC was very upset about the information coming out about the intergalactic slave trade and some other information, and they didn't like us talking about the people on their bases being slaves. So they, as an olive branch, they wanted to take us to one of their facilities and give us a tour. But they didn't know that one of the people that had defected from the ICC was a person who had lived on one of these bases and gave us intel on the base. We didn't really know that it existed. So when we were on our way to Mars, Gonzalez, they put up a map and said, which of these facilities would you like to go to? And Gonzalez just called out some coordinates, and the ICC representative was pretty shocked that we knew that it existed. Well, I guess one of the most interesting things that occurred on this, and I'm abbreviating so we can get to questions. One of the most interesting things that happened was when we were on this train. It was a train to where you sat in front of, you were facing the people. You're sitting in a line on both sides of the train facing each other. It was a narrow train. And I was asked by one of the people, where are you from? Because when I appeared there, I had been in the sun recently. I smelled like aloe. I did not smell or look like someone from outer space. And I made the mistake of saying, just real quick, I'm from Texas. And everybody looked shocked and started, shooting looks at each other. And I heard them murmuring to each other. And when the train stopped, we had another train about 10, 15 minutes later pull up behind the train we were on, and a new detail of security guards came out and replaced the other ones. And the other security guards were, they had their weapons removed and they were frog marched out. In the process, we got to go and look at the facility with all of the people interacting. And when we were, I didn't know, but there was already an arrangement that we were going to get to take one family back with us so they could be properly, interrogated or questioned about what was going on at that facility. And we figured out very quickly that when we brought this family on board our craft before we left, that there was somebody missing. And Gonzalez was very upset, and he stormed out and went to talk to the facility commander, and apparently that conversation didn't go too well, because very quickly we had a security detail rushing out to our craft and put us under arrest. We were put in this cell that, when we did the tour before, we didn't see any signs of a prison or a jail. And they walked us up to a wall, and these doors just kind of appeared and opened. And we walked in, and there were all these cells. And they walked us through to the back where they had a cell that would accommodate all of us. And they put us in, and Gonzalez was saying it didn't look good for us, that this base commander was a complete lunatic. And right when we were really starting to get worried, blue orbs came in the room and took each and every one of us back to the LOC. And when we arrived at the LOC, it set off all these alarms because we weren't expected. And September 3rd, I went to the inner earth to meet Kari. This is an image that was created that shows the crystal caverns I was brought to when I was probably about 11 years old. We were walked out and we spread out in sort of a semicircle in this area, and we were told to try to interface with the crystals, but not to touch them because it could damage us or the crystals. So we went in and we all interfaced with different crystals and really didn't think much of it. But apparently we were being used as sort of a USB drive. We were gathering information, and later on, through the process that we would always go through, they would try to gain as much information as they can that we had absorbed. These are the raptors. The raptors had gotten control of these crystal caverns thousands of years ago. And they guarded them. They would not let anyone come to visit the Crystal Cavern except for the Cabal groups. And the Cabal groups would bring a human as a trade or a sacrifice to be able to take people or to go to this Crystal Cavern, something I didn't know when I visited. When I visited, it's a 100% chance that they handed someone over for that visit. Another image. That was one of the beings that they showed that lived in the inner earth that you would very rarely see them. They were very skittish, holding their little ring saying precious, But you would mainly just get a reflection of their eyes, a red, pinkish reflection of their eyes is pretty much what you would see. When I first arrived in the inner earth area, it was it's kind of like a monastery. It was a very monastic feel to the place. And when I walked in, I got a first glimpse at not only these beings, there were two men on each door guarding the door, but the symbol above is a Vesca Pisces, and I didn't know what it was until I had told David, and he told me what it was. Here's the area where I came in for the cleansing ceremony, and that was very embarrassing for me. I took all my clothes off and was to cleanse in this pool of very cold water. I expected it to be warm or hot water, like geothermal water, but it wasn't. And of course, that's when I first saw, or the second time I saw Kari. She came walking in, but I didn't differentiate her from any of the others because I hadn't really conversed with her yet. And the statue was a woman. It looked like she was holding a baby or a basket, and then she had her other hand out like this, and it was totally encrusted with like lime deposit kind of stuff, and you couldn't really clearly make out what the statue was at this point. But there was a port above her head that was about this big, that this white water was coming out of, and there were stalactites that were building up around the port. Interesting enough, after I described what I saw, I received emails from all sorts of viewers stating that they had seen similar images depicting inner Earth. So there's been a lot of people that have visited these different groups in the inner Earth, other than myself, obviously, or these images wouldn't be coming out. You can just kind of click through them. Now, what was interesting is that these huge pillars that were in this cavern, I can't even begin to describe how big this cavern was, but these pillars went up, got narrow in the middle, and then widened out again. And inside the rock pillars, they had built out all these different types of dwellings. And you could see the light coming from them, the reflection of light off of the windows. Here's some commissioned art. This looks similar to what I saw. And right here you see there were cigar, egg-shaped, and disc craft that looked like a highway up above your head. They were coming and going, and they were disappearing into the rock wall of the cavern. They were going full speed, not slowing down at all, and just disappearing into the wall of the cavern. This was their garden. It was very big. And that's, I guess, the highest vibratory food that we're going to find. And then this was the park area where I could hear different animals in the background, and there was an obelisk that was in the middle of this park that had a giant glowing sphere above it that was mimicking the sun. It was putting out full spectrum light. And I described this to David, and it was right after he had commissioned the art for his new book, The Ascension Mysteries. And we almost didn't discuss this because it looks too coordinated. It looks like him and I worked together, but the art that came out on his book was amazing because the synchronicities. You can see, yeah, I mean, everything. And then in the background, you see Saturn, which was the symbol that they were wearing. This was shocking to us. And here are images of the Inner Earth Alliance. The Anshar group, their eyes were just maybe 1% to 3% larger than ours, very, very hard to perceive. And this was one of the groups. This is the one that most people love to hate, the Omega group. They were very militaristic. And here's Kari's group of the Anshar, the ones that had white hair. Oh yeah, I got the right one in. This group with the swastika on their forehead, they had an area where a crystal was under the skin. And so they had a lump right here on their head that it kind of came together almost like a squinted eye. It was interesting looking. This is when I have my private meeting with Kari, to where we have the mind meld. This is still I can't think of another incident that has affected me so dramatically. After this, I changed my diet. I got off of all pharmaceuticals. So it was a pretty inspiring meeting. There's Kari. It's actually in the library. This was after she came and asked me if I wanted some of this amber, thick amber-looking liquid. And she said it was the elixir of Isis. I turned it down, but she had some, and it seemed to relax her quite a bit. In the library, when we appeared there was a long golden rod that came from the ceiling with a hand holding a crystal ball. And David Wilcock told me that had been seen or reported in an underwater pyramid off of Bimini.
Yeah, in 1968, Ray Brown found that crystal, and it was the only thing in the room he knew. There was also a rainbow phoenix with filled with diamonds. And there was a table with 12 chairs, and he reached and grabbed it and said, you have found what you've come for, leave and never return.
Well, yeah, it was just one of many things I saw around, so it really didn't jump out. But when I had an artist depict it, David thought it was fairly significant. In the library, there were documents all the way from scrolls to leading up to books that were leather bound and also bound with plant material, all the way up to books that had ISBN numbers on them that looked like they were straight out off of, they just ordered them off the internet. Yeah, it was pretty amazing. They walked us through this conference area where there were about 100 or more of these egg-shaped chairs. And you would see groups of people sitting around. The chairs would kind of be in a circle, and they would be having a literal conference call together. And others were sitting in these chairs, and they were projecting outward to all of us on the surface, to impart knowledge, to motivate people, and up until this point, they had been presenting themselves as non-terrestrial groups when connecting with people psychically. They had one piece of crystal from this crystal cavern that did not show any type of aura, and they were trying to get it to grow in this chamber. And at the point where I was there, it looked like they were unsuccessful. These are some images I had created of the Mayan breakaway group. Wait, they're not in there? Oh, there we go. They look very much like the Oompa Loompas in the movie Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with Johnny Depp. It was uncanny. In their hair, they had these braided buns, and going through their hair, they had strands of gold fiber through their hair that was really cool. And they had ponytails that were, and the artist couldn't depict it for me, ponytails that would wrap around this way and be real tight against their head. Some were on this side, and some were in the back at the bottom. And they were like long ponytails made into a circle, and they were braided with this gold cord through them. And that's the real end of that first presentation.
What kind of physical effects, we know you have some issues there, and you mentioned the computer thing, some other stuff, but what kind of physical effects have you had from your age regression and progression, I guess?
A common age regression side effect is you'll have eye problems. A lot of people that have been in the space program, in the early 80s anyway, there was not adequate shielding, so many of us began to get eye issues. And another symptom that pops up is neurological issues, problems with the neurology in your forearms, all throughout your body. And I've experienced some of that as well.
Corey, in your recent update, you said that Ra Tier said the mandala effect is real. Can you say anything more about it? What is it? What is happening with the mandala effect? Is that like the 144,000 or the 100th monkey?
Yeah, the Mandela effect, I was thinking about it to myself because actually Jay Widener, one of the producers of Cosmic Disclosure, brought it up to me at our last taping. And I'd had many emails from viewers asking me about the Mandela effect, but I just didn't have time to look into it. But he started telling me, the Bearstein Bears, you've heard all the different scenarios. And does everyone know what the Mandela effect is? Okay, all right. I can't remember when it was when Mandela became president of South Africa. When this occurred, there were people that were kind of shocked because they had memories of Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. And I had that memory of him dying. Yeah. And now, all of a sudden, he was president. So that they name it the Mandela effect after that incident there. But it actually covers many, many different things. There are people that remember this cartoon called the Bearstein Bears, and the name's different now. I can't remember what it is, how it's different, but Berenstain Bears, yes, it's spelled different. There was a whole bunch of different examples. If I were you, I would write yourself a little note to look into it. My interest was piqued after Jay Widener brought it up, and I was thinking about it when Thierry was talking about us needing to get on the optimal temporal reality. And when I was thinking about the Mandela effect, he stated that yes, this was a real phenomenon that was occurring, that we can expect to see more and more of it as all of these different timelines are merging right now. So this is something that I think it's worth looking into because it's a real phenomenon.
Corey, you've talked about this event where the heliopause pushes all of these entities and kind of cleanses the system here. Is this the same as Cobra speaks about, the physical event of the financial reset? Are these similar? Have you heard about that, or?
They definitely sound similar, but I have not looked real deeply into Cobra's information still, so I don't know exactly where it correlates and doesn't correlate with the information I'm giving. Mm-hmm. But this final solar sneeze event it's described, and I was shown an image or a visualization of it. The sun had a complete ejection of its corona. It just ejected in all directions. And then the sun turned dark, like one of the dark spots that you see on the sun. The entire sun was dark for a number of days after that.
So it's possible we may have 3 days of darkness?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. And of course, I've had several of these questions. Do we have any time frame for that? It's a window of opportunity, right?
Yes. Well, the SSP Alliance had been using their probable future type of intel gathering and also information that they've received from non-terrestrials, and they had a time frame of 2018 to 2023 that they expected the solar sneeze to occur.
Okay. After the event, will the Agarthans come out and provide assistance to the surfer dwellers as they have in the past?
Yes, after we have a full disclosure event or any other type of mass event that is going to raise our consciousness and let us know what has been going on, we have a number of groups that want to come and assist us. The Inner Earth group is definitely one of them. They would like to speed it up and come out and start working with us before this event. But in order to do so, they have to have the Muhammad Accords have to be ratified. And the Muhammad Accords have nothing to do with Muhammad. They were, it was a treaty that was signed by different non-terrestrial groups and Inner Earth groups right after the time of Muhammad. And during that time, they had open contact and sometimes open warfare in our skies between these different groups. And it was interfering with the sociological progression of our species. So they decided that they would create this treaty and only manipulate us from the background through, proxies, human beings that were part of the cabal.
Do you have an updated timeline for the, I guess the same question there. What can we expect to happen at the time of this event? Will there be some people ascending before or after? Will there be intervention? Will some people be lifted up?
Well, it's all up in the air right now. Right now, we are deciding what's going to happen. It's this co-creative reality that we share. Our consciousness, our consciousness is growing right now with all of these energies that are coming into the solar system. So the timeline has not been created yet, or has not spliced off of this one to where we know exactly what's going to happen. There are a lot of potentials that could happen, but we're going to be the ones that ultimately decide what's going to occur as a mass consciousness.
Have you heard anything about the people who will not ascend? I mean, is this wide open? Will some people be taking other planets? As you've heard about that, or?
Yeah. Well, I really don't know, because like I said, it just depends on the type of ascension or event that ends up occurring that we develop with our mass consciousness. So you can't, no one can say right now that this will, it's definitely going to happen this way. I did a remote viewing of a solar event to where there were this flash, and all of humanity saw it at the same time. And these cabal groups, it was almost like weeble wobbles, those things that, wobble like this. They kind of rolled back and just rolled off the planet. They just disappeared from this reality. And all of the remaining people joined hands and started singing and were looking at these clouds that looked like rainbows.
Yeah. Different sources have indicated that when the grid comes down, of course, the Agarthans and some of the ETs will be freer to come here. One girl named Bonnie said that you'll know you're very close is when some electrical systems start to fail. And I guess we'll probably have some help. Is there any confirmation on that about the grid?
Oh, yeah,
what's
that was in my report. The